A pop-up isolation center ready for migrant workers as COVID cases spike in Windsor-Essex. Today we asked Ontario's top doctor and the Premier, is enough being done to control farm outbreaks? That heat warning still in effect for Windsor-Essex. Right now sitting at 33, but feels like 42 with the humidex. Low risks of thunderstorms tonight. Nick Cerkovich has all the details in his forecast. I'm Chris Hensing. Thanks for joining us. A spike in COVID-19 cases here in Windsor-Essex over the last 48 hours. 93 cases, the majority people working in the agri-farm sector. This as a new isolation center has popped up in Leamington. Mayor Hilda McDonald took me on a tour today, talking about her concerns with the low rate of on-farm testing. A hockey rink refitted for a pandemic. A pop-up isolation center, 50 beds under the scoreboard.
For us, this is great.
But what Leamington's mayor really wants is more on-farm testing. Is this going fast enough in your eyes?
No, I wish it would be quicker. But we're still at the stage where it isn't mandatory, so farms and employees can choose not to be tested.
The first on-site testing was June 20th. As of Monday, 19 farms have completed testing, 5 more scheduled. 11% of workers tested have tested positive. Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health says they're being thorough.
What we ran into is we found some large outbreaks in some of these institutions. When you find the large outbreaks, you have to certainly address that. And we ran into some logistic questions around isolation facilities.
With 50 spaces, this will make a small dent in the number of isolation rooms that are needed for the migrant workers that are testing positive. But it's not just those with COVID that need to isolate.
We're looking at somewhere between 250 to 300 people in isolation in the hotel motel area. Many of them are negative, but they are identified as close contacts, so that's why they need to be separated. So if any of them develop COVID, they're not infecting the rest of their group, so which could mean one case can spread to like maybe 10, 15 or more.
The Premier says it's all hands on deck, promising a visit next week.
And I'll be able to see firsthand and look at the results.
But advocates want changes, not check-ins from politicians.
At the federal level, we continue to demand permanent status on arrival for all migrant workers. And at the provincial level, once again, those proactive inspections and legislation to protect migrant workers, which does not currently exist in Ontario.
Back at the pop-up, Mayor McDonald is trying to focus on the days ahead.
I think we're all trying to do that, keep our eye on the ball, not be distracted by those things. And hopefully that in 8 weeks we're through, or in 10 weeks we're through, or at least to the point that we feel that we've covered everyone and the threat of infection has been brought down. But I think we have to be realistic. This isn't going to be, again, as I said, snap of a finger.
And here's a snapshot of what we've been seeing since that on-farm testing started. So this graph starts on June 18th, just before that happened, and we're now around 787 cases. This is just within agri-farm sector, a majority migrant workers, and it's on CBC's count that we based off of the daily briefings from the Windsor-Essex Health Unit. Fares return and masks must be worn on Transit Windsor buses. The new policy is effective immediately. A press release saying anyone riding the bus or standing at the downtown terminal must wear a non-medical face mask. The city says ridership is down by about 83%, but has been slowly increasing. On Sunday, the downtown terminal will be open as Transit Windsor returns to front door boarding and fare collection. An Ottawa man says that he wants to see more post-mortem COVID-19 testing after Windsor Regional Hospital denied his request to swab Ada Lidwell, his 103-year-old grandmother, for the virus after she died.
We had a discussion about how this made no sense if the hospital was at all serious about contact tracing. Obviously, you always want to establish if there is a patient zero in any infection chain.
Lidwell was transferred to Windsor Regional last month after breaking her hip. She was swabbed on arrival and tested negative. Her recovery was going smoothly until she suddenly developed severe pneumonia and later died. When Saunders asked for a post-mortem COVID test, he was told that's against hospital policy. An epidemiologist from the University of Toronto says that he's not aware of anywhere in Canada where post-mortem testing is mandated, but believes there are circumstances when such tests should be administered.
The process to do so is straightforward. It's the same as a living person. You just put a swab in their nose and then send it to the lab. So in a pandemic, you don't want to miss deaths. And so you have your systems try to make sure that they're oversensitive to picking up deaths, particularly in the elderly.
A man has been arrested and charged with 2 separate sexual assaults on the Windsor waterfront. Both incidents happened a few days apart, and the 24-year-old man was arrested last Friday. He's facing 2 charges of sexual assault, and 1 count of choking. Jacob Barker now from the waterfront live, where police say that one of the incidents took place. What do we know about these assaults?
Yeah, well, Chris, I'm just down from Riverside Drive and California Avenue, and that's where police say one of these incidents happened. And the other alleged assault happened somewhere along the riverfront, although police aren't saying exactly where. The first case took place on May 28th near midnight. Police say a woman was walking alone when she was attacked from behind, knocked to the ground, and bit. In the second case, which happened on June 2nd, also late at night, a woman was approached by the man who wanted to speak with her and make small talk. During the encounter, police say the man became physical with the woman and touched her in a sexual manner. In both instances, the victims were able to yell and get away. Police caught up with the suspect the next night and arrested him, again, very close to the waterfront, just up the road from here on Bridge Avenue. In both cases, those involved were not known to one another. When you're talking about sexual assault, these type of instances are not in the majority.
These are sort of what people believe are what really happened in the area of sexual assault. It's in the dark, it's in isolated areas, it's by somebody not known to you. In reality, those are about 20% of the sexual assaults that actually happen. 80% of the time, the offender is known to the victim on some level.
So Fiorini did add that most sexual assaults take place during the daytime in public places. And I did also ask her about the location here, the fact that there's no lighting and not a lot of safety measures in place. Both of these instances occurred late at night, but she says that it's a public place here. There's a busy road just up the hill, as well as houses and traffic flowing along there, as well as along the river. So while there is always a room for more safety measures to be put in place, when it comes to predators, they do plan where they're going to be and pick their spots out.
Location itself may not be the risk factor. It may be something that was convenient for the offender, because there are other locations in our community that are hidden, and there are trails and so forth that could act as a potential opportunist area for somebody to commit an assault.
Some really interesting information there, but what are police saying about this, Jacob?
Yeah, well, police do say because these victims did not know did not know this person that did these alleged incidents, there is a potential for others who had similar experiences to be out there. They are asking anyone with any information to come forward.
Right now, these 2 cases are being investigated, and we'd like anyone who has any information to contact police, and if they believe they have been a victim, to come forward.
And that information, of course, can be given directly to the Windsor Police Service, or if somebody wants to come forward anonymously, they can call Crime Stoppers. Chris?
Thanks for this, Jacob. The CBC's Jacob Barker live from the riverfront tonight. In just a few hours, employees at the Windsor Assembly Plant will be working their planned last shift. About 1,500 jobs are affected. The shift was in place for 27 years and was initially expected to end in September of last year, but was extended until this month. The COVID-19 pandemic had shut down the facility for weeks, but it reopened in May. FCA says the decision was made to better align production with global demand. Our CBC reporter Jacob Barker will be covering the final third shift, and we'll have more on this tomorrow morning. When Somali-Canadian journalist Hoden Nalea died in a bombing in Somalia last July, recordings for a project that she was working on with a friend back home in Canada were left behind. Now, Nalea and her friend, Fatuma Kuso of Windsor, were in the early days of producing a podcast about being single mothers. Kuso wasn't sure what would happen with those recordings until she met one of our CBC reporters. We spoke with Amy Dodge about the podcast last month. Amy, it's been a year since she died. Can you remind us what happened?
So last July, Hoden was reporting in Somalia when she was killed in an attack at a hotel. The bombing also killed her husband and 24 others. Hoden at the time was 43 years old, and she was also pregnant, Chris.
Wow. How did you get involved in this?
So Hoden's death was really big news. It was a Canadian journalist, a prominent journalist at that. She was killed in Somalia, and she had ties here in Windsor. So I started making phone calls to people in the Somali community here in Windsor to see really if anyone knew her. And after a few phone calls, it became clear that Fatuma was likely the last person here in Windsor to speak to Hoden before she died. Then I met up with Fatuma for the interview. She mentioned this podcast. She shared some of the recordings with me. And the women in those recordings, the two of them were talking really candidly about being single mothers and the challenges they faced. At that time, it was an unfinished piece of work. So when she was leaving, when Fatuma was leaving the building after the interview, I really felt this need to just offer to help her edit those. If she wanted, I said, you can come over. I can help edit those podcasts if you do want that. It was an offer that she actually took me up on months later.
Welcome to Picking Up the Pieces podcast. I'm Fatuma Kuso, and Hoden Nalea is my co-host for the following episodes. We started recording a year before she died. This all began, Hoden and I were close friends. One day we were just chatting about challenges, and she said, if we did this as a podcast and shared it, I bet it could help a lot of other women feeling the same issues, same challenges we are.
Let's face it, there's women out there who are suffering.
So we were in different cities. At some point, I was always in Windsor, and she was in Toronto. Another point, she went back to Somalia to rebuild life because she always wanted to be there. So we decided that she had studios here in Toronto and back in Somalia. So she would sit in the studio and call me through WhatsApp or here in her regular call. And then we would chat, pose questions about things we were facing and chat about. And she recorded it and created MP3 files that way. And the goal was for us to be in the same city at some point to record the real episodes we would share and use those files as kind of like the working files we would draw from. So how are we going to make this a podcast that was complete and clean? That never happened because I was supposed to be in Somalia where Hoden was to rebuild her life there in the summer of 2018. But unfortunately, Hoden was killed in a suicide attack on that July the 14th of 2018. I was shocked. I know a lot of people die in attacks and explosions like that in Somalia, but with her, because I was so close to her and she was so vivid and alive in my mind, that I had a hard time. And that's when I was approached by Amy Dodge, who was doing a story on Hoden's passing. What is it? Does it even make sense to make it into a podcast? So I shared the clips that were supposed to be the podcast. And as I was leaving, Amy said, if you wanted to edit these and put them into a podcast, I'll try and help you out. Hoden and I decided to make this single motherhood because we had a feeling that because there's a large number of divorce rates in the Somali community, you don't have to worry about what other people say. You can go on and you try to work this relationship. It didn't work, you got out, Now, how are you going to take care of your family, your children, and yourself? I feel good about the episodes and the way they turned out. I didn't know what to expect at first, but I'm really happy the way they turned out.
Because if I stayed, I don't believe I would have been half the mother I am to my children.
So much passion there, and an important story as well. What was it like for you to be a part of that, to help it get across the finish line?
Extremely humbling, a very unique experience, a very intimate experience at that. And my biggest concern, being more of a producer role on this project, was how are we going to maintain the integrity of Hoden's voice? Now, Hoden was in Somalia and Toronto when she was recording with Fatumo. She had studio quality audio. Fatumo at the time was actually on the phone. So we needed to really repurpose the recordings and maintain the integrity of what Hoden and Fatumo were trying to do. And now, Chris, listening back, I mean, it's like Hoden is right there in the studio with us. And I know that's the impression that listeners are going to have when they hear the podcast as well.
Really excited to take a listen myself. Thanks for this, Amy. You can listen as well. Picking Up the Pieces is available on the CBC Listen app and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Take a listen, rate the podcasts, and give it a review while you're there. Ontario is making major changes to high school learning in the province.
We're acting to ensure all young people can pursue ambitious career paths. Currently, students in grade 8, as the Premier noted, have to make a decision that affects their lives for decades. It's why our government is moving forward with the de-streaming of Ontario curriculum, beginning with the grade 9 math curriculum in September of 2021.
Now, the Education Minister did not indicate if or when other subjects would follow. The practice of streaming has long been criticized as discriminatory. It requires grade 9 students to choose an academic or applied course of study for their entire high school career. And research shows students from racialized communities, low-income households, and other marginalized groups are more likely to be steered away from academic courses, affecting everything from graduation rates to employment prospects later in life. Leaders in the Black community shared their experiences of anti-Black racism on Canadian campuses. They were part of a panel made up of current and former students, and they all say that big changes are needed to address systemic racism on campus.
Once I moved off campus in second year, and we were downtown and we were around locals and we were in clubs, it started to kind of change shape a little bit. So it went from things like, Black people are so funny, to like, your English is great, or you, like, where are you from? You're probably not from here, to being confronted by students in blackface at a party who were smiling and leering, and being threatened with violence and being told to go back to my country. And, you know, friends of mine having this, like, similar experiences, or having the N-word spray painted on their dorm rooms.
Being in that classroom and not having anyone that looks like you, talks like you, like, it's a pretty big culture shock in and of itself. I got to the point where I was taking my names off my papers because I thought that I would have a better chance at getting a better mark because my last name is pretty ethnic, obviously, and I didn't want that to be a reason as to why I couldn't get an A.
And particularly when you're at the undergrad level and you're learning sort of the foundational pieces, right? All of the major theorists, they're white people. All of, you know, if we're looking at even music, classical music, it's white, Eurocentric, it's opera, it's you know, these are our standards. And it really does alienate you from Black excellence, I would say.
It's about making Black students, Black faculty and staff also feeling safe. So creating spaces for Black students to, and Black faculty and staff to have open conversations and to have space for community healing and to support each other, right? It's not about the institution holding our hand or saying, I think this is what you want.
She has an attitude, or she has something to say and stuff like that. So when we as Black people are voicing our opinions, it's just looked down to and attached to a stereotype.
The hot sunny days we've been feeling will be fleeing their way into showers on the weekend, of course. We will have the full details of the forecast when Nick joins us with the weather. And joining us now for a live look at the forecast is Nick Sirkovich. Nick, feels like 40-something out there, but I don't even know if you can put a number on how bad it is when you walk out of the door of air conditioning and just get hit by it.
It's like hitting a wall, isn't it?
Oh, it's rough out there.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me, I went to a wedding many years ago in Houston, Texas. Ooh. And when you walked outside, you were sweating from the time you went from the house to the car. And that's what we're feeling right now here, too. Yeah, anyway, I mean, they're used to it. I guess we should be used to it at this point, but it has been a particularly hot summer for us. So the heat and humidity in the air, we're going to talk about that, but it is also providing the fuel for some thunderstorms. So watches and warnings in effect areas east of Windsor at this point, but I want to bring them up anyway because you notice scattered thunderstorms across the region. So we don't have any warnings down in the Windsor area. However, still wouldn't rule out an isolated shower or thunderstorm tonight. I think most of them are going to stay north up towards Sarnia and eastward, but can't rule out an isolated shower or thunderstorm through tonight. Heat warning still in effect right across southern Ontario. Of course, this is the heat and humidity we're talking about. Temperatures today hitting 33 degrees right now in Windsor. I think that's the high for today. But with the Humidex, as you mentioned, about 40. That's what it feels like. And that's basically been the story right across southern Ontario. And it's basically been the story for the last 8 days. So that is going to be some of the fuel for showers and thunderstorms tomorrow. We've got a trigger, which is another system that's going to move through. It'll start out dry tomorrow. Again, the risk for a few spotty showers this evening, then dry tonight, then tomorrow morning dry. Then around noon, we're looking at showers and thunderstorms moving through the region on and off throughout the day tomorrow. Heads eastward. By the time we hit Saturday morning, kind of clears out. The risk for a few isolated showers on Saturday and Sunday as well. Generally, though, most of the rain coming tomorrow. All told, we're looking at about 25 millimeters of rain possible with this. I wouldn't put too much stock in those numbers exactly, but about 25 millimeters of rain is what we're expecting. 23 degrees through the overnight period tonight. Tomorrow, temperatures up to about 32 with the Humidex, still 40. Now, little bit of relief in terms of the humidity heading into the weekend. Temperatures 31, 28. Humidex values, though, drop down into the mid-30s, and that's where we sit. That, by the way, should be a 30, not a 20. Sorry.
Oh, but I was ready to get on the long johns there.
You or if that was nice, you know, it's a relief. But
that was
that
a
should be
tease. That's what that is.
That's my mistake.
No, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. Thanks for this, Nick. Always appreciate it.
All right.
Now, when we come back, we have elephants to show you. But what's better than an elephant? A baby elephant. What's better than a baby elephant? A pair of them. Twins. Super rare. That's next. Authorities are searching a lake near Los Angeles for actress Naya Rivera. She's well known for her role on the TV series Glee. Rivera went missing during a boating trip with her 4-year-old son yesterday. Her son was later found asleep on the boat. Authorities suspect that Rivera drowned.
It is still an active search, but the reality is the story that we got was that she went in the water. She was swimming with her son. He came out of the water. She did not.
Dive teams, helicopters, and drones, they're all involved in this search. Rivera gained popularity for her role as a cheerleader on Glee. She was a main character on the show for most of its run. Rangers at a nature reserve in Sri Lanka have come across what could be a very rare find: twin baby elephants. Now, the two big bundles of joy were spotted feeding from the same mother. DNA tests are being done on their manure to confirm if they are indeed twins. If so, it will be the first confirmed sighting of twins alongside their mother. 2 years ago, twin elephants were born at a national park in Kenya. According to National Geographic, only about 1% of elephant births result in twins. It's 6:29 p.m. and that's it for us here at CBC Windsor. You can always find more updates on our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. We want to remind you that Power and Politics is up next, already in progress. Thanks for watching us tonight, and make sure that you and your family stay safe.